Hi, welcome to the Technology Evangelist podcast, sponsored by Medidenta Digital. I'm Dr. John Fluke, Technology Evangelist, and I've got a young, well, not that young, but a younger dentist, today, Khamir Patel, who is a tech lover. And Khamir, the way I like to kind of start these normally is give me your origin story. Go back as far as you want to, and tell me what got you into dentistry, what got you into technology, what gives you that buzz. So just give me the whole story right here of how you started doing all this.
So, I am a grandson of a physician. I grew up in India, so healthcare was something that I always enjoyed. So, if you ask me, very early on in my life, I somehow wanted to become a dentist. So, we used to fill out these books like tell me about your future and stuff like that. And one of my friends shared, like in sixth grade, I wrote down I wanted to be a dentist. So, if you ask me exactly when that spark happened, I really don't have the answer. But I have been wanting to become a dentist for a long, long time. But technology, like early on, like I just enjoyed being around electronics. Like early I can remember, I used to have fun breaking down like broken electronics. So my mom used to give me a broken radio, and I would go back, sit down with a screwdriver, and open everything up just to see what was underneath. And it's just like I don't know if you remember those old. Hard drives with those silver discs
Yep.
inside. So I used to open them up and take them out. And it's just like, I think always used to love that. And I think dentistry became something that helped me use all that. Like it's a very hands-on profession, right? It's medicine, it's science, but at the same time, you get to do something with your hands every day. You can
Yes.
change the way you do. You're an engineer of sort because you're always finding solutions, right? Like if you
Right.
have to do a filling, you don't know what kind of matrix you're going to put in. Is this wedge going to fit in here? Is there, like, there's so many things. Like even the material science is so awesome. I used to love material science where people hated it. I always used to love how composites work and the hybrid layer and the nano epoxy capitites. We had a book. I remember that I sat down and started reading about all those things, and I was fascinated. And luckily, I got a chance to come to the US. I ended up going to Boston University, and you did call me a little old, but I was the youngest in my graduating class, so I still feel and feel young. But
Good.
no,
Good.
it's been a while. So no, I enjoyed dentistry. I never found dentistry stressful. I found implants to be one of my passions after graduating, and got some really good mentors, and was able to get a great support network within my own colleagues and some other providers that I've worked with. And I enjoy doing that. And again, that's where the technology piece started coming in with. We briefly spoke on email about the Blue Sky plan that I learned over
Right.
COVID, and how I was able to like start doing all these things on my own. And I was able to plan these cases, and then just doing these implants guided has been something of like a stress-free procedure in the sense that I was able to do all of that. So no, that was the whole side of dentistry. And then it's something that I always wanted to do, was do something where would be able to do something that would touch everybody, like not just a small group of patients and people that
Sure.
I work with. And that's where this idea in dentistry came about, where I started decided that, okay, now I'm going to jump into trying to do something very off the path, and founded this tech startup called SmartChair.AI. It's basically using sensors to monitor occupancy in dental chair. And then one thing led to another. And it's one of those cliche things. I was sitting on my dining table and drew out a pen and paper. Okay, you have a chair with a sensor in it. Would this work? And then I went to Dimitri, who's my co-founder, and said, Dimitri, do you think there is something to this? He's like, yeah, this would work. And if you can come up with a solution. And then I used to go to the office that I was practicing in. I used to go on the weekends and try to put a sensor and see if it worked, and go to Home Depot to buy some washers, and it was not working. And then on the days the patients were there, the patient would go sit in the chair, and I would quickly run to the computer to see if it was capturing it or not. If it was not capturing, I'm like, damn, it doesn't work. Then I need to go back next week and fix it. So it is just has been a fun exercise in all of that. And also being able to be exposed to the startup world in dentistry has broadened my vision so much. Like, I love to talk. I love to like mingle with people. I can literally talk on any subject, and being in a company of people who have big visions and talking about changing things in the whole world. It's amazing, and it's just been a great ride, and that brought me to this podcast. But again, that's the long short of it, and
Sure.
I can keep talking, but
So before we started, you told me a great story that happened to you today about a young patient. I think you said that he's autistic and he
yeah,
bruxes. Yeah,
yes.
tell me that again. I want to hear that. I want everybody else to hear it too, because I think that's a great story.
Yeah, so this morning I was thinking. I have a patient. He's been my patient for a few years now, and he is autistic. He's an adult. He's an actual adult. He lives in a group home, and he's an adult. And he came in, and the last few visits I was noticing that he was bruxing, and its bruxism was getting worse and worse. In the last visit, I actually noticed that his bruxing has gotten so worse that I could start to see the pulp chamber on his maxillary anterior, because of he has a class 2 deep bite, and it just was getting to a point where I'm like, this is going to become a big problem. He needs a night vet.
Right.
And then he lives in a group home. So we have mentioned it a few times before, but this time I'm like, can you please talk to whoever his family is that he needs this? This is not a covered procedure, but we still want to make sure that he gets it. And I think they had the
Absolutely.
discussion and they figured it out. And the patient came in and I told my assistant that let me do this, let me do the impression today, because I know that he's very difficult, because as I mentioned, he's a nice guy, no complaints, but as soon as you put anything in his mouth, he like tenses up. So even for a
Hmm.
cleaning, I have to use a bite block, because I put a bite block on one side and then I can clean his teeth on one side, then move it, because it just closes on me. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? And then we have an iTero, an intraoral scanner, and I scanned, like I did the same thing. I put a bite block, did half a scan. And after I was done, I was thinking that God bless for this machine. If not, I do not know how this guy could have tolerated 3 minutes or even ultra fast acting alginate or a heavy body. How he could have tolerated this in his mouth, and what would I have done in that situation? Like, he probably would have to be sedated, and that too, I don't know if that works for impressions, but it's just piece of technology. It makes things efficient, it does all of that great, but when you see it in a sense where it actually helps patients, I think that was an amazing way of me thinking about the podcast today. I'm like, this is what technology is all about, and it's just overall improving the quality of care that you provide, quality for the patients. And yeah, that was like just a very warm moment for me today.
It's interesting to me because you talked about going to Home Depot and buying parts, and so many people that I talk to that have done, above and beyond. I think people that are, doing startups and people that are like coming up with these great ideas. Somebody asked me the other day and they said, where's the next generation of inventors coming from? And I think dentists have always been kind of inventive. And like you said, we like to work with our hands, we like to figure things out. But I have met so many people that one of the first things they say when I talk to them is when I ask them, how did you start? And they'll say, well, I tinkered, you did electronics. Um, some people do engines. I did engines and electronics. But it's interesting that common thread of people that like to do that and then take and expand that. Um, because you're right, the technology it's changing constantly. It changes so fast, really nobody can keep up with it. You can keep up with pieces of it. And that's one of the things I think that's really great about companies like Trust AI, which is when it comes to dentistry, it's hard to keep up. But if you've got access to something that can keep up and learn faster than you can, that's great. But there's all these things outside of the actual clinical scope of what we do. And I think that's the next generation is the dentist tinkerers in the field. I don't know that we'll see as many scientists come up with ideas that we can apply. I think we'll see more people like yourself, more dentists that tinker and they think, hey, I'm onto something, and I think I can do something with this. So you mentioned this sensor that you're working on. Tell me a little bit about this whole thing with SmartChair.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add one thing to it.
Sure.
One thing that I feel that in today's day and age with social media, with like online learning, it's become so easy to like start something and do an MVP. The barrier to entry is extremely low as opposed to like back in the day where you had to hire somebody and do all of that. So I'll just
Right.
give you a quick story of how I started with the idea. So I started doing 3D printing in during COVID. You know the FDM 3D printers where you can. It's not like clinical grade 3D printing, but
Right.
I used to print out face shields and I used to
Right.
print out those mask covers, and I started using all of that, and I learned how to do 3D printing. And in that situation, I ended up using a Raspberry Pi to connect it to the internet. And then
Okay.
I tinkered with it, and then it worked on Linux. I am used to Windows, I used to Mac OS. I never had to figure out Linux. And then I went on LinkedIn, and there was a course I took to understand the Linux operating system. And it was all, this is all free. Like, I'm not talking about spending any money or
Right.
doing anything. I just had the desire to do it, and I figured it out. I'm like, okay, this can be done. And then I hired somebody from Upwork. Have you heard of Upwork? It's a
No, I have not.
freelance, so it's a freelance platform where you can hire any professionals. You can hire web designers, you can hire designers, you can hire video creators, or you just post what you're looking for. So I had this older gentleman, a retired electronics engineer somewhere in the Midwest, and I wrote down that I have this idea. I want to use a Raspberry Pi, and I want to use an off-the-shelf FSR sensor and be able to monitor occupancy and on and off switch. Like, it was just basically a simple Python script, like just right in the beginning. So he said that, okay, just order these parts for me, and then I'll create something, and then I'll send it back to you. And then he sent it to me, and I tried it out. So what I'm trying to come to is, if somebody has an idea, they don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to test it out. You can do it extremely cost effectively. And then he's I love micro center. So we have a micro center close to where I live. So it's my candy
I
store.
love
So
micro centers. I go in there. I'm in there for hours just with my eyes big, walking up and down the aisles. I need that. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it, but I need it.
yeah, it's a candy store for me. So I went there and I bought a breadboard, and I bought those capacitors that he told me, and then I worked it, and I pressed on it, and it shot up like an on event in a Python script. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so that is what started this whole thing. I'm like, okay, this in theory is a concept. Now I need to translate this into a dental chair. How can I use that to monitor occupancy in a dental chair? How can I know when a patient's seated versus not without any human intervention? Because that was the key. Because you could do it by an on, like you basically put an event saying that, okay, the patient's now seated, the patient's now left. But when you're relying on human beings, the error rate is enormous. And we have tried to figure that out. Maybe a single practice owner who has the same office staff every day, great, like you can have that dialed down and everything's perfect. But when you're talking about larger organizations, I work for a DSO, we have some great staff members, but again, sometimes we do have people wanting to leave up and go up in the company. They become a regional manager, they become, and then you're training somebody new and they don't know, and then it just, that whole data set becomes useless. So that's where this idea came about, and I used off the shelf sensors to figure out what was working. And then I hired some overseas developers, and then had to spend a little more money then, and then did some POCs, and now I actually had to get a PCB manufactured, and then had to go through multiple iterations. You need patience. I had to go through multiple iterations because the first chip, the Wi-Fi was not connecting. The other one, there was fluctuations because of the power source. And it's just so funny. Like, I can talk about these for hours and the challenges that I've faced, but it's just finding a solution. I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. Let me see what I can do to find a solution. And now,
And it's
3 years
all about
later,
the tinkering, right? It's all
yeah,
about the tinkering. Try this, doesn't work. Try that, doesn't work. Try this, works. And then you get that buzz of, oh my gosh, I figured this out.
absolutely. And that buzz is better than anything else.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I'm like, great. Okay, this is something that I'll be able to use. And then that's how we have developed the product. And right now we have a working I wouldn't say we are out of prototyping and MVP. We have actual paying customers. We have a functioning product. So just before this call, I got a confirmation in one of our partners that our API integration is completely done. All the testing is finalized. So we have reached a far long way from where we started. But it's just the fact that any technology can help you become more efficient, and I see this as a way to understand your own productivity, understand where you stand when it comes to how well you are doing as a clinician. Because unfortunately, I learned the hard way that if you can't practice, you cannot make money. So you have to be in front of the patient, next to the chair, to be able to be productive, like when it comes to generating revenue for the office as a dentist. So time is of essence, and not that you want to rush anything, but being effective with your time and being efficient with your time. I don't think the patients want you to sit there and chit chat and like spend hours and hours doing a procedure where you can have a nice conversation, but they want to do that procedure as fast as you can, do it like in a way that it's really good, and then get them out of their chair. Nobody loves sitting in the dental chair ever. I've not heard, like maybe there are a few patients, but it's just being productive with your time. Like even doing a crown prep, right? You can have your systems in place. Okay, I'm going to do this step first. And I've learned from some greats. I've like, okay, do the occlusal reduction first so that you can prep the walls faster and stuff like that. You can
Right.
measure, okay, this is where I'm at. This is how fast I could get, and looking at productivity as a whole. So that's how I look at dentistry in general, of making sure that I use my time to the best of my ability, because that helps me see more patients through the day, be more productive, and generate more income for me and my family. So that's one of the key things that I genuinely believe in. And I think this is a tool that's going to help dentists understand and measure. And as I said, that you can fix what you don't measure. So that's what it's all about.
The old adage of what gets measured gets improved. And I would say that I've been in dentistry longer than you have by the color of my hair. Um, I have only once in my career, Khamir, had a patient say, can you do this slower? And that the only patient that ever said that to me was when I told him I've never had a patient that didn't want it done faster, same quality, but faster. Nobody wants dentistry slower. And he smiled and he said, I'm going to be that one guy. Can you do that slower? Because you're right. Everybody wants quality, but nobody wants it to take longer. Nobody wants to spend another 30 minutes with a rubber dam on their molar, pried open. Nobody wants, a 20-minute impression. People want quality, but we're also busy now. We're all living off of calendars and everything's on demand. And being productive is hugely important. So SmartChair, correct me if I'm wrong, SmartChair is a sensor that basically tracks when there's a patient in the chair, how long they're in the chair, and when they leave, so that you can more efficiently schedule. Is that kind of a good summation?
Yeah, it's a great summation, and that's exactly what we do. We joke around and we say it's called butts in chairs. So you basically are measuring.
Yep.
So that's what
I've
we
heard that
measure.
a few times in my career, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you're talking about impressions, and I was thinking about the iTero again, right? The intraoral scanner, for that any matter, right? It gives you
Yeah.
instant reduction, right? It tells you exactly how much your reduction is. So that has helped me make sure my impression's perfect every time. So I don't have to make any adjustments. So my crown delivery appointments are like 10 minutes, because I never have to deal with an reduction coping and put those red stuff and reduce it and fit the crown. I don't have to use fit checker. Like it just fits, because now
You
everything
should
dialed.
call iTero right now and tell them that, because that is like a spokesperson statement right there for the technology.
Yeah, and Jarvis they paid me no, but they do not. It's just one of these pieces of technology that I absolutely love, in the sense that I feel that it helps me become more efficient, uh, and innovation. Right? I'll tell you one more thing about innovation that I love is I and again, please, I give all this feedback as a user. I am not a spokesperson, nor do these people compensate me for any of their services or
Right.
products. But we use ZimV implants, right? And they have the encoder
Okay.
buttons. So I place my implants guided. So I have these guides made, and then I place my implant. I get great torque. I'll put a healing collar on. 2 months in, patient comes in. I'll take an X-ray. Oh, great. How are you? Great. Go home. 3 months come in. I'll quickly do a torque test. I'll come in. Takes me 5 minutes to scan, and I'm like, great. They come in 5 minutes to deliver the crown. Like, I am blown away by the productivity technology has brought in, because I remember back in the day, you remove the healing collar, you put an impression post in, then you take an X-ray, you go ahead and then use your light body, heavy body, make sure nothing's moving, and it's just such a tedious procedure has now like been dialed down into such an efficient and easy procedure, just all thanks to technology. And I think this is just the start. Things are going to get better and better and better. But having said that, I think there's going to be a point where the cost and the experience are going to level out. And I always give my friends an example of the aircraft. You know how the
Yes.
747 it still functions after
Right.
60, 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know how I just, because people found out that they don't want to go get anywhere faster if it's going to be more expensive.
Sure. Yeah.
So any of those automated like implant placement companies where you can have everything but have these robots to place an implant, great. But like, what is that break even point? I read somewhere, right? A guide's like $30 when you make it in your office, and you get the same amount of precision, same amount of speed. Like, what advantage are you going to get from anything else, like any other piece of technology? So uh, yeah, that is one of the things that like I feel that technology needs to make sense on an operational basis, and like any other thing. One other thing, doctor, I like when you said, right, the cost of doing business has gone up tremendously, and
Yes.
reimbursements are not keeping up. And that is one of the reasons why efficiency is no longer optional. It is something that we need to like look at. Like, dentists have been lucky that they have been able to run really profitable businesses, but now they are being pressured from all the angles. There's just
Yes.
too much overhead. Like everybody, and again, there are so many factors behind it, and we can get into that. But it's just the fact that it's still a lovely profession, but you have to look at how efficient you are if you want to run a profitable business. And that's, I think, ties into what we are doing at SmartChair, is just giving you a lens. It's not going to answer all your questions. It will help you make better decisions. Looking at expansion, right? A lot of new dentists plumb out eight ops, 10 ops, but they only buy 4 chairs, right? When is the
Right.
right time to buy the fifth chair? Our sensor, you put our sensors in, you know exactly, okay, we get to 60% occupancy in each chair. That's when we want to order the new chair. So this makes it so much easier to make those decisions rather than making a gut based decision and then never using the chair, or having to wait like to schedule your patient because you don't have a chair. So those kind of things, we believe SmartChair will help people make much better and faster decisions. And it's a very, very low cost product. We have been able to keep it low because, again, like any other startup, we run lean and mean. I, being a tinkerer, have been able to develop everything on my own. I'm the technology guy. I'm on the installer. I'm the developer. So it helps keeps costs down. And I think that is something that I have found early on, that we need to make sure that we make sense and it doesn't blow to a point where there are too many um, features and too many modules where people don't end up
Right.
using it, but the costs just become out of hand. So
Well,
it's
and
just an
it's,
it's
sometimes technology can be like composites. A composite can come out, and then after a couple of years, they have to come out with a new and improved version. And sometimes the improvements are so minor. And that happens with software too, where, like you said, there's new features added, but do you really need it? Um, you know, Sometimes you don't. I think what's interesting when you talked about the speed part about it, the efficiency part about it is so true. It used to be when I first started in dentistry and we put operatories in the computers, that every time there would be a new chip released, a new processor, people would upgrade because the software was improving, and you were doing video and all these things, and you needed a faster processor. Now the processors are so fast. It's like the iPhone. The new iPhones come out. It used to be that, they would show pictures of the Apple store in New York, and there'd be a line 6 blocks long because people are like, I want to use the new apps. I want to do this. And my current version is too slow. But then you do get to a point where it's like, how fast is fast? Do I need that, extra tenth of
Mhm.
a second to, bring up my calendar or to send that email? And it kind of becomes a law of diminishing returns. Sometimes I think once you reach a certain point, that's good enough. But we end up doing things. I think sometimes we end up overdoing things or overthinking things. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, which I think you're spot on with, is the whole analytics thing, is that there's a reason why uh, analytics companies like I'll just use an example of dental intelligence, of being able to look at the numbers in your practice in a previous generation of dentistry. Like you said, profitability was good and you didn't really have to worry about where are my expenses. I mean, some people did. There's certain dentists that are great business owners and they love delving into the numbers, but a lot of people aren't numbers folks. And so you didn't have to do it. You didn't. But nowadays, if you want to maintain your profitability, you've got to analyze the data. You've got to look at, the cash coming in, the cash going out. We all walk that tightrope, of profitability versus service. You've got to, you want to provide the best care you can. But I've said for years, you can have the absolute best clinical skills in the market, but if you can't stay in business, you're never going to help your patients. And nowadays, staying in business really does require like that steady hand on the analytics. It's a given because if you don't, you suffer. And then you don't have, I loved what you said earlier too about one of your mentors told you, take for your first however many years in practice, spend 10% on CE because that's so important. But where do you get that 10%? How did you get all that implant education if you weren't profitable? And then you took that money and you invested it in education. And what happened? You got the return on that because now you're doing guided surgeries. Now you're placing implants better. Your patients are coming to you because it's predictable, it's quick, it's easy, and it's great service. I mean, that's what all this boils down to. Like you said, I guess nowadays with the cost of an operatory, the cost of equipping an operatory. Here's a quick story. Years ago, in the mid 90s, I put a new operatory in my office, chair, everything, completely equipped the room. My father stopped by to take a look at it the day the install was done, and he was walking around and he said, "How much did this cost?" And I told him, and he looked at me and he was like, "You just spent more than I paid for the house you grew up in." And that's the thing is the amount of money that I spent in the 90s to equip an operatory is probably, I don't know what, close to half of what you'd spend
Yeah.
today. And why would you want to gamble on that? Why would you want to gamble on spending that much money and think, I think I'll use that, you know, buy a car. I think I'll drive that. I mean, it's
Mhm.
kind of crazy. If you don't have the analytics, you don't know.
You could not have said it like better, and I believe that to my core that just having that sense of understanding, okay, and now I actually need to invest in a chair. And when you're talking about larger organizations, you own 10 offices, 20 offices, 30 offices, and you're not going to be in that office all the time. Having this objective measure of, okay, now I know, okay, this is how much my objective measurement should be. It's just going to be invaluable in the future. And that is why we are slowly moving towards what we say is we can create this layer of data, be accurate, and the place where AI comes in, and I like sometimes people do ask me where what is the AI part of this, is that the dental chair is not a static chair. It's just the center of gravity keeps shifting. So a patient will come in, they'll sit, they'll move around, and they'll be laid back. When you're doing the procedure, then they'll sit back. So being able to capture that whole event from start to finish, saying that this was one patient. What we have done is we measure multiple sensors and measure them throughout the day. And we have trained a machine learning algorithm. So AI is going to be the next step where we'll be able to predictably say, oh, okay, these are the appointment times. An average root canal takes X amount of time, a crown prep takes X amount of time. But right now we're using machine learning that identifies a patient based on the chair type. So it's just unique in the sense that we are not just static seats. Like the chair you're sitting in right now, you put a sensor in, it's very easy to measure. It's an on and off. But with a dental chair, the center of gravity creates a challenge that we had to solve. And again, we have found a great solution for it. So that is what we believe we'll be able to partner up with other and so Dental Intel is one of the partners we would love to work with. I actually was at their conference last month. Amazing time. I learned so much about dentistry in general and how people look at numbers and the metrics that they were looking at. One of the metric that they saw is that how likely is a patient to do a procedure after they have an exam, something that they track. And I'm like, this stuff is great. And I'm like, this is what I believe genuinely in, that the more data that these PMSs are going to produce, and now that everything is cloud-based, everything is centralized, more analytics and AI is going to come in where it will be able to analyze and say, okay, this is an ideal schedule for you. This is the most productive way you can build out your schedule. Because I think that is one thing people um, like get into a lot of like trouble with, is not having an efficient schedule. They end up seeing a lot of patients, but they're not productive. But with the data from the PMS and the chair time with our technology, combining all of that, I see a future where you will be able to optimize and create a schedule which will be effective, will prevent burnout for the dentist, will be able to prevent less waiting time for our patients, better quality care in general. It's a win-win for everybody. And I think that is where technology is going to take us. Within the next 10 years are going to be exciting.
Well, and one of the things we've seen since COVID in dentistry is we've seen such a turnover of staff. And it used to be in the good old days that somebody would start working in a dental office and they worked there for a long time, and it's not that way anymore. And I know that when you bring somebody new in on the administrative side, if you've got like a scheduling person, or even if you're in an office where maybe two or three people at the front desk are doing the scheduling, and one person leaves and the next person comes in, and the first thing they have to figure out is, okay, I need to schedule for a crown. How long does the doctor need for a crown? In the office I used to work in, they scheduled for an hour, but the office I worked in before that, they scheduled for 2 hours. So what do I do? If you've got the ability, I think, to actually be able to monitor and say, it takes the doctor, I'll just put a number, 90 minutes, start to finish, to do a crown. Well, then that makes the scheduling person's job much easier because they know how long they need. I would think that something like monitoring chair utilization would be huge in the DSO world. When you're trying to keep track of everything like that, I would think that the DSOs would be interested in knowing utilization of different, all the different technologies in the office. But probably the easiest way to know if any of it's being used is there actually a patient there to start with?
Yeah. And there is so many ways you can boil this technology down. And I give an example of so recently I'm working with an office, right, where they have uh, there's a owner that owns two offices, and then they have associates. So the associate works 2 days and the owner works 3 days. So we have been tracking production per chair hour. That's what we call our metric. So just production per chair hour of patient. So the owner dentist like produces about 600 to 650 a month, while the associate produces about 375. So there is a stark difference between those two things. And they have started having a conversation with the associate in the sense that we don't want you to like do anything that you're not comfortable with, but let's put a goal. Like I think people in today's day and age work much better if you put an objective goal in front of them, that this is where we want you to get to. Take your time, no rush. And this is how the owner dentist like how like if I had to do a crown prep and there were two other fillings in that same quadrant, I'll do it the same day, just because it's more efficient that way. The patient's numb, everything's right there. And sometimes people don't think like that. And I think just small changes in your schedule like that make such a big difference. Like if you had to do an SRP and some extractions in the same quadrant, do it at the same time. Like it just makes for the patient a better experience with not having to get numb twice and just getting things done at the same visit.
Not
Like
having to
if I
find a babysitter, not having to take off work, not having to,
absolutely.
all of those things that factor into it. That's one of the reasons I always hated when I would wake up and I had to call in sick, because I would always think to myself, how many people does my not going in today impact? It impacts daycare, it impacts the employer, it impacts the patient, it may impact the patient's spouse. There's so many things. And if, in order to make one dental appointment, a person
Yeah.
has so many pieces in the air that if you cancel them or move them, and I've got friends that move people all the time and it drives me batty. I'm like, how can you do that to people? Because the world we live in is so compact. Yeah, being efficient with your time, and other day you don't have to take off work. I mean, I have patients that work in factories. They get one personal day off every 6 months. I can't tell them, okay, we're going to do this filling today, and then we'll get you back next week and do this filling. I mean, they're like, get me numb and do everything you can, because you're not going to see me for
Mhm.
6 months, and then I'll get a cleaning. And if you find anything, I hope there's a hole in your schedule, because, I'm going to take the day off to get a cleaning. So I might as well get the dentistry done right then. I mean, the efficiency of this, like I said, and the impact on everybody else, not just the doctor and not just the patient and the team. That's huge. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration, I don't think.
So one other thing that I'd love to touch base on is that it's just a changing generation of employees. Like how back in the day you had your phone, right? You never had to
Right.
like track your phone, how many calls were made,
Right.
because they didn't have their cell phones in their hands. They were not looking at TikToks and Instagram reels all day long, right? They are paying a lot more attention. So
Don't
sorry,
make me spit when I'm taking a drink on here,
no,
because
but
you're
it's
right.
like,
You're
oh,
absolutely right.
These voice over internet companies being able to track that is huge, right? How many calls were made? What was the average waiting time for the call? How many calls went to voicemail? How many calls were picked up? And how many text messages were answered? So it's just not that you're policing these people all day long, but I think having a metric to, okay, they know that I'm being looked at in the sense that I'm expected to do this job and I'm supposed to do it. It just makes for a better employer-employee relationship. It just sounds like, coming out of my mouth, I see how it might sound like you're trying to like micromanage everybody, but it's just the day and age you are in. I know a lot of business owners can feel like as they hear this, they're like, oh, I get what you're saying, but they just can't say it out loud. But
Right.
I'm at a point where I get it. I get it. Like the people I work with, they've been working there for a long time. They love working with him because they know that when Dr. Patel's doing what he's doing, we need to focus. But then when we are all having fun, he'll have fun with us. Like it's
Right.
just we need to have that. Like we're not creating a negative environment for everybody to be in the office, but just people get distracted so much. And don't even get me started on Apple Watches these days. Oh, like we had to put a stop on that, like in our office. Like they'll be like, even between a procedure, and they'll be like, oh, let me answer this phone. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, no, I'm like, absolutely not. Like, but people don't have those boundaries, right? So it's just
Right.
one of those things where being able to objectively track how much chairs were used and how much productivity happened in the office just helps keep people accountable, right? And like I can like drill down on all these things that are going on in dentistry right now, and at like at the at the risk of being controversial, I'll say that it's just all these new grads get an opportunity to work in an office with minimums, but they just don't understand that there is a business associated with that minimum. Like in order to pay that minimum, this office needs to make X amount of money. And sometimes I have seen with my personal eyes that there's complete detachment of those two things. Oh, I'm here, I'm going to get my minimum, I'll do whatever I feel like doing. But when I started off, I always used to think that I need to be efficient, I need to be productive for this to be a win-win situation. If I do
Yes.
better, and I think that's why my relationship with my co-founder Dimitri, who's actually the CEO and founder of the DSO that I work for. because I always saw that office as my own office. I'm like, I need to make sure there is less waste. I need to make sure that I'm doing the best I can, being productive. But it's a changing environment. And I think being able to track chair time is going to come in sooner than later. It's just something that people will have to like look at just as a sense. So it's just a changing world, and I think technology is going to play a big role in understanding how things are being done, and with introducing all these technologies, being able to monitor how much more efficiency you got out of it. Like you look at these training programs where they claim, okay, we are going to help your associates like get better with crown preps. Now if you can measure that, think, right, like in the next month what was the average time spent on the crown prep versus before the training. Like the vendors will be able to measure that and show their ROI. So there's a lot of use cases to the technology that we are building. And for me as an innovator and an inventor, I think it's just the buzz that you said with to see how, when it works and you go do an install and everything starts coming in and the data shows up and you now start seeing a heat map. I think it's just something that I see will be used just to make dentistry better and help just become more efficient, help our patients get better care. Like I work with a community health center, and their goal is not productivity in terms of dollars, but their productivity is seeing more patients because they are encounter based, and they are in an environment where there are not a lot of dentists. So they want to make sure that their chairs are being utilized to the maximum potential, because if they yes, then that means that they are serving more patients and they are serving more people in the community. So it's not just about money and productivity, it's about more access, being able to go in and see more patients. So it's like any other technology. It's in the hands of the users to use the way they see fit, but it can be used for good, it can use for bad. And I'm not naive, but at the same time, I do see a lot of benefits for what we have created in the dental industry.
You know, when I was in dental school, a company brought in an intraoral camera and they demonstrated it. And I remember looking at it and just being fascinated by the idea of, oh my gosh, I can actually show patients their problems. And one of the older instructors uh, was at the demonstration with me. And when they got done, he turned to me and he said, well, that's just an excuse for people to, sell unneeded dentistry. And I just thought that was an interesting mindset because I was, I was enthralled with it. I thought, oh my gosh, you can show people what's going
Mhm.
on. People, one of the problems we have in dentistry, I think, is communication.
Mhm.
And, you know, people people remember about 85% of what they see, but they only remember about 10% of what they hear. And if they can never see inside their mouth, it's really hard to understand the problem. You can explain to them till you're blue in the face, but you show them a photo of something, it just makes so much sense. And I've never forgotten that moment in my life because your whole thing of you can use it for good and for bad. Sure, can you show a picture and say, "Oh my gosh, well this is terrible and this is going to cost you $10,000." But at the same time, if you can show somebody something and say, this is going to be a problem. I can see this problem developing right here. It's your choice if you choose to fix it
Mhm.
before it's a problem or not. But that's the difference. It's, like you said, the technology is not at fault. It's the human beings. It's like how you use it, the information you use. The machine is never going to prep a tooth for you, and without your permission. And
Mhm.
that's the thing with the doctors. I think all of this, the technology gives us better communication, and then it helps us do our jobs better because we can see things better. It's much easier to scan. It's much easier to use a camera. It's much easier to keep track of what you're doing. And I think the patients appreciate that. They appreciate the investments in what we do. I had one of the best compliments I ever got in my life was I had a patient when I don't know if I've ever said this on a podcast before, but if I have, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but I had a patient And I came in, it was a hygiene check, and I came in and we got done and it set him up. And he said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I thought, oh boy, there's a problem or there's a complaint. And I said, sure. And he said, it costs me more to come here. And then he kind of looked around and he said, but I can see exactly where the money goes. And I thought that was a great compliment. I was so happy with that because yeah, you invest in all that to do better, to provide better service, to be more efficient so that a crown doesn't take 3 hours or, whatever. And the majority of your patients appreciate that. They appreciate the investment in technology. They appreciate, you going and educating yourself and learning to do better implants. They really do. And I think that's a big thing about tech is that some people are opposed to it because it's just different. And I get that. But the old adage of, when they invented the Model Ts, there would be one broken down the side of the road and people would yell, "Get a horse." But, that didn't work out so well. And so sometimes when we start things, there's a few hiccups as we get it up to speed and there's a learning curve. But once it gets up to speed, it's an incredible ride for people. And that's why I'm so passionate about tech is it just helps us do what we do better. And everybody benefits from that.
No, absolutely. Just look at X-rays, radiographs, being able to look at from a large screen rather than having to look at those small radiographs and trying to figure out if there's a cavity there or not. Now everything's
Did you
blown
ever
up.
use film? Come here, to
Yeah,
curiosity.
so
Have you ever used film?
I went to school in India before I came here, so
Okay.
I did learn how to like do all of that
Okay.
there in India.
Yeah,
We did
and you
have
and you know
we
how
were
bad it
hybrid.
is. When you said hold
Yeah.
the little thing up, I was like, he's used film before. I thought I wasn't
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. You're
I have
100%
tried.
right on
Yeah, no, it was super crisp because it was analog, but at the same time, it's hard and it's impossible to show a patient, right? Right now, for
Yes.
me, we have computers right in the ops. I blow it up and I can show them exactly where the lesion is or where the cavity is, and it just makes it so much easier for the patients to understand. And like as you said, right, technology is a tool. Uh, Genuineness, wanting to help your patients, the patients can see through that. Like I have always found, like you want to do the best for your patients, and they can tell. So using these technologies to aid in that and helping make better decisions and help them make better decisions in their like overall health. So I work in a very very um, I would say it's a very poor neighborhood, and it's a very blue collar neighborhood. Poor is
Okay.
not the right term. It's a very blue collar neighborhood with not a lot of dental IQ. Let's put it
Sure.
that way. Not that
Okay.
patients don't have money, but they just don't see spending money on teeth as a priority in their life, right? But when they understand the why and what behind what you are wanting to do, they do tend to like want to fix their teeth. And I give them props because I have patients who would come in and I explain that, okay, you have these teeth missing in your mouth. These teeth are shifting. You don't have enough teeth to chew with. Let's get you into a second premolar occlusion, 10 teeth on the top, 10 teeth on the bottom. It's going to take you a year to do it. We'll do 4 implants. That's all you need right now. Let's not worry about the whole mouth, and they come up with the money. They'll come in with like $100 bills from somewhere and they're like, no, Dr. Patel, I want to do this. So, and then I use a guide and they have a lovely experience. And then they go and say that, oh, Dr. Patel did these implants. I did not feel a thing. It was easier than doing a filling. And then I get referrals. And I think technology in that sense has helped me a lot because I'm not fiddling. I'm not like trying to figure out if my implants in the correct position. I don't have to move anything around. Like 4 implants in an hour and a half, I'm done out of the op. The patient's on their way home without any significant discomfort after. I think that's what technology is all about. So two pieces of technology that I genuinely love in my daily life is the intraoral scanner for impressions and a surgical guide for implants. There's a lot more, but those two like touch me on a day-to-day basis. But I
Do you design
absolutely
your own guides? Come here.
so I do not. I basically
Okay.
plan the guides. I plan the case on my own, and then I send it out to a company called Implant Concierge, and they make
Okay.
the guide and send it to me. There's no back and forth because I use their service called treatment plan. transfer or translation. So basically, what they do
Okay.
is I will do my blue sky plan. I'll put my CT scan. I'll put my STL files. I'll put where I want my implant. I'll save everything, lock everything, send it to them. They'll translate it into their software, make the guide, and send the guide to me. So it
So
just
you
makes
do
for
design in blue sky then?
yes, yes. But I don't design
Okay.
the guide itself. I just design the placement of the
The
implant.
implants. Okay. Yeah. And that's
I
beautiful.
actually
You
yeah,
get
and I actually
exactly
did.
what you want.
Yep, and I know the case like the back of my hand. I know where the bone is. I know what to plan for. I know exactly where the depth needs to be. What kind of implant am I going to place? Can I do a 3.1 versus a 3.7? If I'm working with multiple implants, I get to plan all of that. And the other thing that I also been able to do is do a wax up on it. I don't know if you've ever tried that out. That is so cool. You have a wax up module now where
I
you can
don't
literally
know.
so there's a wax up module in Blue Sky Bio now, so you can
Okay.
basically I had a patient where I had to do 6 crowns on the bottom and they were like very broken, and I need a wax up, and I'm like could I um do this on my own? Let me try this out. And you know how, like, I don't know how well versed with your software. When you sign up for it initially, you get 5 free credits for like
Right.
STL trans. So I had the credits with me. So I basically went in, I did the wax up on my own just for like the sake of figuring it out. And I think there were some great videos online on their website on how to do it. And then I basically did the STL file from it, and then I sent it
Yeah.
to my lab, and they printed it and sent it to me in 2 days. And I'm like, oh wow, this is great. And I know a lot of people who do a lot of in-house printing. I just don't have that setup at work. It's just the way we are set up, and we are a very busy practice, and not something that we have dabbled into. But I see the benefit of how people use that technology, like the scanners and printers in their office. So there is so much that can be done with that. I just have a friend who just bought 3D printers, and they're doing a lot of occlusal guards with
Right.
3D printing. Just makes it such a great experience for the patients to get it right away. And I think with implants, uh, photogeometry is something that I want to try for a long time. I have a case that's coming up. I've heard so many great things about it. I think that for full arch cases, that's a game changer. And it's just the cost is a little too high right now. I think once it becomes a little more
Sure.
affordable, we'll have a lot more leeway in using the technology, making it a lot more accurate, and a lot more providers will be able to do full arch cases more predictably. So there's so much going on in dentistry right now, and it's just an amazing time to be.
It's all about, I like to say it's all about the speed and control. And that's exactly right. You know, you get that control when you're doing the plan yourself. I mean, I love it because you know where the implants are going to be when you're done because you've
Mhm.
planned it out in the software ahead of time. And that's a great thing. And I love the way you're doing it. I mean, you've learned to design, you know how to place the implants. At some point, you know, you'll take another step. You're busy enough as it is with what you're doing and being an entrepreneur. Um, Khamir, we're butting up against the magic hour mark here. It's like just
Yes,
like that it's gone by.
yes,
But
yes.
um, tell us how they can find out more about SmartChair AI.
So we have our website at www.smartchair.ai, and then I'm very active on LinkedIn, so would love to get a connection request if we are not already connected. Always go up for conversation in general about dentistry and how we can all build the future of dentistry together. Always learn new things, some things that I've brought back to my practice, something that you might be able to bring into your organization, to your practice. So LinkedIn is a great tool, and my email is Khamir, Khamir at SmartChair.AI. So if you want to reach me out there, that's I'll be available there as well. But um, all in all, it's been a great experience with talking to you right now, and I hope we can circle back and continue this conversation because I see that you have a lot to say about technology. So do I, and I think we can definitely discuss this in a lot more depth.
Yeah. Oh, it's all about the community. I love talking to people. So come here. Thank you, everybody. I'm Dr. John Fluke. This is the Technology Evangelist podcast. We are sponsored by Medidenta Digital, and I am super grateful for their support. Uh, we'll see you again. Thanks for watching.